Welcome to another edition of the Unsanctioned Podcast. I'm Luis Vasquez. You can find me on Twitter at Luis Vasquez617.
This is your boy Jay Holland. You can find me at JOCity, JAYOCITY, unless it's on Facebook at that 781 at the end.
And I'm Julio June. Welcome.
On this episode of the Unsanctioned Podcast, we are hopping out of the ring into the commentary booth.
Who we got today, June?
Who do we have?
Today we have
June.
A former esteemed member of the WWE announce team, formerly known as Rich Brennan, Rich Bocchini.
Still a fan favorite, might I add.
Huge fan favorite.
Oh, man.
And he's dishing.
Can't wait to pick his brain about what the WWE
and you guys,
backstage area is like.
This is the Unsanctioned Podcast. We are now being sanctioned over your airwaves.
Gotta bring the city back, let me know we still here, never gonna stop. Keep rolling like a wheelchair, getting re-shook. You know the wolf smell fear, throw him in the trunk, turn your man to a straight spit. No tire, just money so fire.
Unsanctioned Podcast.
Yes. I don't know about y'all, but I feel we have the greatest fucking intro song ever.
Certainly do. And if you want to hear it on your own time, how can you do that, Jay?
You can look up Impala, M-P-A-L-A. You know what I mean? That's once again Impala, M-P-A-L-A. You know what I mean? Find his music all across iTunes and wherever music is found, man. You know, this is called Where You're At, featuring Just Money. For my Hustle Squad family, you already know, man.
If you getting money, homie, show me where you at. Show me where you at. Show me where you at. If you getting money, homie, show me where you at.
As we mentioned on this episode of the Unsanctioned Podcast, we are hopping into the world of commentary and those experiences around it on the grandest stage of them all.
I think we are the most well-rounded podcast because we bring you former in-ring performers, current in-ring performers, commentators, former commentators for the big leagues and independent. So I think when you look at certain podcasts, you really have to look at it like, who else brings you this besides us?
Jay, you cannot tell a lie.
Talk that trash.
I mean, we talk that truth. I don't know about talking that trash.
But still, talk that trash.
You know what I mean? I just think overall, like, who brings it?
Who
brings it better? Who brings it more than the Unsanctioned Podcast?
Who?
Oh, man.
Well, without further ado, let's bring him in. Mr. Rich Bocchini. Rich, how's it going?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Psyched to have you on.
Oh, it's happy to talk to you. You guys are up in the Boston area. Grew up in that area, and I've become more of an Astros fan because I lived in Texas for a number of years, but still a Red Sox fan.
Astros. We're just gonna pretend you never said that. Wow. and did this?
Listen. I grew up 3 blocks from McCoy Stadium. Literally grew up at McCoy Stadium. So the Red Sox run through my blood. I started rooting for the Astros when they were in the National League.
Okay, so not in 2017.
You're not a bandwagon fan.
No. You know what? Honestly, that was a tough series for me because I didn't. It was one of those where I really had a hard time watching that series. I just wanted it to be good. I wanted both teams to play well. But it was kind of one of those things where, like, I grew up a Red Sox fan, was in Texas so long I became an Astros fan, and then when they moved to the American League, I knew that this would be an eventuality. I knew at some point I would probably have to face this. It came quicker than I thought. So I tried to remove the emotion from it, and I just watched the series. I would have been happy with whoever won. But with Houston going on to win the World Series, I was rooting for them in the World Series.
Good save there, Rich. Good save.
Hey, you know what? As a fan of both teams in that series, you're in a win-win situation. That's the way you got to look at it. Glass half full.
No, you got to pick a team. You got to pick one team and ride with it.
Hey, I just root for good baseball. Glad we got that figured out.
Now, Rich, growing up as someone who grew up in the New England area and WWE having its roots in the New England area, and you have an opportunity to go on and work for the company, kind of tell us what that was about, what that felt like, knowing that, you grew up in an area that had WWE deep in its roots, and now you're now working for that company.
It wasn't anything I ever really thought would happen. I think as a kid, we all grow up wanting to, if you're a wrestling fan, you want to find a way to work in wrestling, but you don't ever really think you can. And I never really thought that I would be able to. It was just through a series of seemingly unrelated events that all kind of led me to that point. Probably when you talk about the New England connection, 2 things kind of stand out. When I was a kid, we used to drive down to Florida, and I remember you'd be like in 2 hours into the trip or whatever, and I'd always wait to see Titan Tower once they built that, because you go by on 95 South and you can see it used to be the old colorful WWF logo, and now it's got the new logo on it now. So I was kind of geeked out for that. And the other kind of weird New England connection for me is when I first did the first SmackDown show I did was actually in Providence, which is the building that I probably saw more wrestling shows at as a kid growing up. That really drew me into the business, is, going to see those shows and a lot of the NWA stuff as well, but specifically the Providence Civic Center is where I saw probably 95% of my live events as a kid. So to be able to call my first SmackDown show there was pretty weird.
Can you actually recall your very first wrestling show at the Providence Civic Center? Do you?
Oh yeah. Saturday night's main event in '86.
Oh
man!
Wow,
one of the greatest events in '86.
Trying to remember, it might have been Hogan and Orndorff.
Oh wow,
Mr. Wonderful.
No, hold on, wait a minute. I'm actually going to look this up right now. I remember. I clearly remember Adrian Adonis coming down the aisle. I can still see it. I can still see him and Jimmy Hart coming down the aisle. I know Hogan was there. He might have been in a tag match. I'm gonna look this up. I'm gonna look this up. Okay.
Is Adrian Adonis? Is Adrian Adonis in his full flower girl, I guess, gimmick mode?
Yeah, I don't know if the flower shop had started yet. Okay. I imagine it. I imagine it did. I imagine it was already going on. I remember he had the perfume thing.
Oh,
okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But kind of like I think he had one like Rick Martel eventually.
I was about to say, Rick Martel definitely stole that
out of the atomizer, spraying the perfume out of that atomizer.
All right, so here it is. May 3rd, '86. It was taped on May 1st of '86 at the Civic Center. Looks like the main event was Hogan and the Junkyard Dog against Terry Funk and Hoss Funk.
Oh man!
King Kong Bundy beat Uncle Elber. Here it is. Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart beat Paul Orndorff by disqualification. Jake Roberts wrestled Ricky Steamboat to a no contest. And if I remember right, that's the match where Roberts injured Steamboat.
Oh, yes.
I remember him. He laid him across the guardrail and came down and.
Yeah, he DDT'd him on the floor, I believe.
Yeah, and I remember like the whole thing was, they crushed his larynx. They crushed his larynx, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if Steamboat at that point. I think he was still in WWE for a couple more years. Yeah, because I don't think he came back over to WCW until '89. But anyway, the last match that's on here, and I actually remember this pretty well. The British Bulldogs with Captain Lou Albano. They were the tag team champs. Defeated Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik with Classy Freddie Blassie. It was a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Oh wow!
And
Super Mario.
And I remember Volkov doing the thing where he came out and he sang the Russian national anthem.
Right.
And the Iron Sheik doing the thing, with, USA, good, he spits or whatever. Wow, I didn't realize. Looking at this now, I didn't realize that I saw Captain Lou and Freddie Blassie manage against each other. Wow. I didn't think that I saw them live.
And if it's '86, that means they weren't managing for too much longer, especially Freddie Blassie. He was pretty old by that time. You just mentioned a lot of legends, and having the opportunity to be backstage in the WWE locker room. I'm assuming you crossed paths with a lot of legends. Is there any legend that you crossed paths with that kind of two-part question, I guess, that kind of made you stop in your tracks? And then is there any legend that you crossed paths with that you thought the experience would be different than it actually was?
Yep. Yes and yes. Yes and yes. Probably the one that made me. Well, the first time I saw Hogan backstage, that was a wow, because I'd never met him before. I'd never seen him in person. Well, I saw him live. I saw him wrestle, but never met him or anything like that. And that was kind of, as a kid, he was the guy you wanted to meet, right?
Of course.
So to get to talk to him for a minute was really cool. I remember being in Minneapolis, and I was kind of walking around, and I remember seeing this guy there. And I'm like, man, why do I know who that is? And I couldn't place it. And then it dawned on me, it's Precious Paul Ellering.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God. So I went, so I made, once it dawned on me, I was like, holy shit, it's Precious Paul. I made a beeline over to him, and, we talked for a little bit and got a picture with him and that type of thing. And actually, the funny thing now is I've called matches for his daughter, Rachel, at a number of independent promotions. So that was kind of neat. And just, I think maybe it's like a month or two ago, I actually did a show in Austin, Texas, where Tessa Blanchard was wrestling, and Tully was there.
Oh wow!
So I know it's not a WWE locker room, but he was there to watch her wrestle, and that was another one where it's like, there's Tully Blanchard. I mean, I don't want to be loud. I met this guy. I don't want to sound like that, but like, a number of these moments were just. it was really cool, getting to meet some of these folks, and some of them develop a rapport with as well. It was pretty cool.
Rich, there's nothing wrong with bragging about who you met. You've worked your behind off to get to that point, and I mean, you earned it. So I definitely feel free to, just throw it out there, like
do it
by any means. Can't no one take those experiences from you? Now, I did have a question. How did you get started in commentating? And I know a lot of people always wondered, like, did you have aspirations of becoming a wrestler, and then you changed your mind, just wanted to go like work behind, I guess outside the ring, but in front of the camera? Like, tell us your journey along that path.
I'll try not to make it too long. I started off wanting to be, at the very beginning, I wanted to be a DJ, I think. And I could probably even go back further. When I was a kid playing with wrestling figures, I always used to announce the guys on the way to the ring, like a ring announcer, and I'd do commentary for that, but never put two and two together. When I was in high school, I used to listen to a lot of college radio, because back in, I don't know if it's still like this, because there's not really any good college radio in Florida, but especially like in the New England area, there were so many good college radio stations where if you're a metal fan or a punk fan, that was really the only place that you could hear new stuff, was to listen to like 2 a.m. to Emerson College Radio or whatever, WRIU. You name the station. So initially, I said, well, I want to go to a college where I can learn how to do radio, and maybe I'll become a DJ. Did that, and then realized that there's really not much of a, it wasn't what I wanted to do. It dawned on me that I loved hockey. I played hockey in high school, and I said, well, why don't I try becoming a hockey play-by-play guy? So I did that, and I followed that for 15 years or something. I ended up transitioning out of that, ended up working in PR and doing media relations and that type of thing. And it was kind of during that time when I was in Houston, Texas, where I got hooked up with NWA Houston, and a friend of mine was the promoter there. So I ended up ringing out, and I reffed a few matches for them. And from that, I ended up getting hooked up with Booker T's promotion, and that's what led me to WWE.
Sounds like you had quite a journey, and it doesn't sound like wrestling was anywhere near the forefront of any of your thoughts when you were starting that journey. You mentioned a second ago that Tessa Blanchard is somebody that you've had the opportunity of calling her matches, and you've seen Tully backstage. And Tessa was signed, I believe, to a WWE developmental deal. I know you did some ring announcing for a few WWE NXT TakeOver specials and then NXT. Kind of talk to us about what's the difference between announcing for NXT and announcing on the, I guess, WWE main roster. Do you have more freedom in NXT? Do you have more liberties with what you're saying in NXT than you do as opposed to on the main roster?
It's the focus was more on the match and less on promoting other stuff. It really depends on the show that you're doing in particular. NXT, the focus is on the action. You're still telling stories, and you still have to get stuff over and get plugs in and all that stuff. But the focus is more on the action. SmackDown was kind of a hybrid where you're focusing on the action. You're still getting the story stuff in, but now you're during the match. You're kind of talking about other things as well. Raw is a whole different animal that I never had the opportunity to do. But some of like the other WWE shows, like Main Event, Superstars. I don't think they do Superstars anymore. No. But those were kind of a mix where you were like Superstars in particular. You called 2 matches for that, but during the matches you weren't talking about the matches. You started off talking about the match, but then you found a way to transition out of that to plug something else that was going on later that was somehow related, if that makes sense. So Jack Swagger may have been in a match. Say, well, Jack Swagger looking for an opportunity to get back in the championship picture. Of course, former World Heavyweight Champion. But coming up this Sunday, the World Heavyweight title will be on the line when blah, 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 blah. And then you start talking about that. Again, it depends on the show. But in general, NXT, the focus was a lot more on the in-ring action.
When you are a commentator on SmackDown, for example, how much are the people backstage in production in your ear? What are they saying? Are you mid-match and they're feeding you stuff? How does that work? Yeah. What are they saying?
You'll be mid-sentence saying something sometimes. Maybe misputting something over that they felt you should have put over. If you're getting off track, your producer will jump in, try to get you back on track. If you screw up, you'll hear about it.
Like during the match?
Oh yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep.
How do you keep going?
You just do it. Just find a way. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have this happen too often. It happened a couple times, but for Michael Cole, for instance, when he's on Raw, he'll be doing an on-cam, and Vince will start talking to him.
He's probably super used to it by now after all these years, and just rolls with it.
And I mean, that's the reason he's there. And he'll even say this. He said it a million times. Look, I'll never be the greatest play-by-play guy in the world. I actually think he's a really good play-by-play guy.
Same.
But there really hasn't been anybody else that can handle everything that role encompasses. Because if there was somebody else, there'd probably be somebody in there already.
Yeah.
There's so much more going on than just calling the match. There's so much more going on. You have Vince in your ear, and you have your producer in the truck in your ear. And the producer in your truck. Now imagine this. You're right. You're in an on-cam. You come out of a match. Oh, what a great match. Yada 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 yada. You talk to your partner, and now you transition into you've got a graphic or a B-roll coming up. So now you've got your producer who's counting you into this B-roll, or is about to start counting you into this B-roll. You have to make sure that your toss to this package makes sense, sounds good, tells the story. But while you're getting counted down and you're thinking about this stuff, try to remember, because you can't look down at your notes. That's a no-no. You just have to remember what you're saying. Now you have Vince in your ear while you're trying to remember what to say, trying not to look like an idiot on camera, and now while your producer is counting you down to the package. Imagine putting yourself in that scenario.
That sounds overwhelming.
And now add a layer on top of this. The package that you're going to throw to is not the package that you were originally going to throw to. So you may have had time to write out a few notes so you know where you're going. Say 30 seconds before that, a minute before that, your producer comes in your ear and says, hey, so we're moving this now. Instead of tossing to this, you're going to toss to this instead. And again, you're kind of jot it down. You can't look at your notes. You've got your producer counting down. You're trying to remember now this thing that you just told 30 seconds ago, and you have Vince yelling in your ear about God knows what. And you do it all without screwing up and without making it look obvious that you're getting fed all this information. And you keep it on track. You get to the package. Everything's fine. That is what being a WWE play-by-play guy consists of, and that is why Cole is the master of it. He is the master of it.
Do you feel like it kind of robs you of you having a personality and being able to put your own touch on certain matches and how you call it?
A little bit, because there's a certain way that they want things done. So sometimes you get told conflicting information too, or you get told, one person's telling you to show more personality, the other person, be more vanilla. There's no easy answer to it. Again, I mean, I think the long and short of it is they have a certain idea of kind of what they want it to sound like, what they want you to look like, and honestly, sometimes that changes on a daily basis or a minute by minute basis as well. So sometimes it's hard because they be yourself, but then when you're yourself, they yell at you and they want you to do something else. So it's challenging.
Now, as an announcer, what's the backstage dynamic like being an announcer with the wrestlers? Now, or the performers, I should say? Are you back there with them? Are you guys in the same locker room? Do they keep you guys separated? How much interaction backstage do you have with those guys?
NXT, a ton, at the house shows and at the Performance Center. You're with those guys all the time. So probably NXT had a lot more interaction with the guys. And so when I was on the main roster, I didn't travel to house shows. So some of the guys like Byron, for instance, he did a lot of ring announcing. So he would do ring announcing and then go and do TV. So he was on the road sometimes, the same schedule as them, 4 or 5 days a week. Whereas I would usually fly in Sunday and then, back home on Wednesday. And then, when you're doing NXT stuff, again, you're at the PC, you're at the house shows with them. I didn't really get that same experience on the main roster, being as tight with the guys. But that said, I mean, you're with them at catering. They know who you are. If you need something, you go and you talk to them. It's not, they have a separate locker room, but, by and large, I mean, if you need something, you just go down there and you talk to them. So, yeah, I mean, you interact with them on a fairly consistent basis.
That being said, this may not mean anything to you, or it just might, but I'd love to know, what does the term Millhouse mean to you?
This makes me laugh. Take us
through it.
The funny thing is, I think Graves, it might have actually been Ryan Katz, now that I think about it. Ryan Katz is one of the producers at the Performance Center. And he may have actually called me Millhouse before anyone. And then Graves picked up on it, and then, Owens picked up on it. And then we had a lot of fun with that. But yeah, it was just something. I mean, as far as Kevin on TV or doing the behind the scenes stuff, it was just something that he's such a great heel, and we get along pretty well.
All that stuff you're doing backstage with him, is that stuff that he's coming off the top of his head with, or is that stuff you kind of talk about a little bit beforehand?
If it's the stuff for like the .com,
Yeah.
That's more old school, where you're just kind of reacting on the fly, where there's a scenario and you just kind of go with it. The stuff for TV is a lot more scripted and a lot more controlled. But the stuff for .com, when I was there, it was very, very, very loose. It was just like, oh, okay, hey, ask him about the match, and then you just kind of went with it.
Tell us about the dynamic between NXT and I guess you can say the main roster, because it seems like NXT, although it is technically under WWE, it seems like they have the pulse of the audience. Tell us about the dynamic between, how NXT events are compared to main roster events, and if you think a lot of that is contributed to Triple H and how he operates things down at NXT, or if it's just a main roster thing and maybe it's a Vince thing and I don't want to say that he's out of touch, but he's just used to his way of doing things.
I think that's accurate, what you said. Triple H is, I don't know that there's as many layers at NXT. I mean, they've added layers since I've been gone. I don't necessarily know that there's as many layers to get something pushed through. I mean, generally, my understanding, the way it was booked, is like most of that stuff is Hunter's idea, and then he's got a couple writers and a head writer for the show that kind of puts this stuff together. But most of that stuff is, it's like any wrestling company. There's usually one guy that's coming up with the main idea. My sense is that there are fewer layers for the people who are contributing to NXT to get through. Whereas with WWE, you've got like a writing team, whatever it is, 20 people or something, and it's just such a more complicated machine in general. And then at the end of the day, everything has to go through Vince anyway, and Vince is known to change his mind, and sometimes do stuff on TV just to amuse himself, quite honestly. So it's I think the easy answer is probably that NXT is probably a little leaner, and it's probably a little easier to get things through, to get things approved, and against not as many layers. That's probably the easiest answer.
Now, you were in NXT around the time when Dusty Rhodes was kind of in there. Can you tell us about the dynamic and just seeing how, being around that legend and a great wrestling mind, he's responsible, I should say, for War Games, and we've seen War Games actually featured back in the last TakeOver event. Can you tell us the dynamic, if you have ever had any run-ins with Dusty, and how it was? And I'm not sure if you still watch the product today, but what you thought of the current War Games compared to War Games of years past?
I'll answer the last part. I don't really watch much WWE at all. Aside from, how do I keep up with it? I'll watch stuff on YouTube. I watch clips that, I haven't sat down and watched an entire show in forever. I think maybe a month or two. What was it? I think Strowman and Lesnar had a match 2 months ago, whatever that was. And I wanted to, so I actually sat down and watched that. But by and large, I'm keeping up with stuff, whether it's Reddit or Twitter, or it's watching clips. I didn't see War Games this year. I thought the idea of changing it up was Shark cages, I thought was silly. My understanding is that Hunter wanted to do it with, the proper way, with the roof on the cage, but that got nixed. So as far as working with Dusty, I can't even put into words what it was like working with him. I remember sitting in the voiceover room calling matches. We'd sit in there in practice calling matches pretty much all day. Dusty's got an office, was right around the corner, and I remember sitting there. I remember having this conversation with Graves, as a matter of fact, where one day we were just sitting there, and I don't know if it was a bad day or just whatever was going on, but we just kind of looked at each other and just kind of laughed for a second, and we're like, we can walk down the hall and pick Dusty's brain. You can just go in there and sit down and say, "Hey, Dream, tell me about whatever." How awesome is that? To get to do that, and to be in the office with him every day, and to get to know him. I honestly can't put it into words. I really can't.
We can't ask you to speak on Dusty without asking for a Dusty impersonation. Now, everyone.
Oh God, no. No.
Now we know that you can probably tap into your inner Dusty, and I'm pretty sure Dusty had some critiques on how things can be better with NXT, and he relay that to you guys in your best Dusty voice. and this is with all due respect, we never want to disrespect a legend like him. But in your best Dusty voice, can you just tell us the best piece of advice he's given you?
Oh, let me think on that for a second.
I feel him channeling. He's channeling it.
I feel him channeling.
Yeah, hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on here. Let's see. I'm actually going through my notes because I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
On my phone, I'm looking to see if I can get this here. Ask me another question. And, like, come back to this.
Okay.
We will come back to this.
I want to see if I can find it.
I would, you know before. Oh, go ahead, Julio.
You know what? I like to, kind of play a game with you, a little quick game of word association, if you don't mind. I'm gonna say a couple names from your days in NXT mostly, and you kind of give us the first thing that come to your mind is, first one I'm gonna mention is Bayley.
Underrated.
All right. What about Byron Saxton?
Nicest guy I've ever met in my life.
Tyson Kidd. I know that's somebody who the main roster hasn't heard of in a long time, but it's somebody in your days announcing NXT was a big player in NXT.
Super down to earth, excellent in-ring performer, and somebody that I wouldn't say like I'm super friendly with, but developed just an acquaintanceship with. It was really sad to see what happened to him with the injury and stuff. But no, it's a good guy all around from what I could tell.
Finn Balor,
interesting guy, funny, dry humor. And honestly, it's really, really laid back.
Special to me because he's in my personal stable. Alex Riley.
Another guy that underrated as an announcer, I think, and probably underrated in the ring as well. I liked Alex a lot. Still text with him every now and then. I geeked out when I saw him in Glow. I don't know if you guys saw Glow, but
definitely did.
I laughed my ass off when I saw that because I texted him. I was like, that's exactly how you pick up Lithicus. It was the funny. I was just laughing about it. I liked Alex. I know a lot of fans gave him shit, but I liked him.
Now, why do you think, Alex is a guy who had the look. He looked like he could wrestle in the ring. Why do you think he didn't make it?
Politics.
Politics.
That's all I'm going to say. Politics.
Right. Now, I think that leads me to another question. How much influence do you think guys at the top level of WWE, the top performers, have on who's coming up behind them?
Quite a bit. I really think they do. If somebody look, I'm not going to say that I wasn't the recipient of that. If Booker T didn't go to bat for me, I never would have ended up there. You know what I mean? So somebody who's there, who's respected, it's like anything else. It's going to carry more weight than somebody who's not. If you work at if you work at a car dealership and you need a mechanic and your best friend's a mechanic, what are you going to say? Hey, the job. I know this guy's good. You going to vouch for him? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Oh, you certified? Yeah. Okay. Come on. Like that's like anything else, right?
How much do you think Vince relies on the opinions of those guys?
I think there's certain people that he. I don't want to say. I don't know if he really relies on their opinion, but I would imagine that the top guys, I would think that they have his ear a little bit more. You're not going to convince Vince McMahon to do something he doesn't want to do, but I think if you've been loyal to him and you've drawn money for him, I think he's willing to hear you out and probably help you along with that.
So I was looking through old footage, not even that old. You were in WWE not too long ago, and I was cracking up with your interactions with the New Day. What was it like to work with the New Day? I mean, did you take any of it personal, or how did that work? Tell me about that chemistry between you and the New Day. Hilarious stuff.
I had fun with those guys. I never thought it was mean spirited necessarily, unless they were being produced by somebody to pick on me. But you just have fun with it. You can't take anything personal in wrestling. That's the thing. You can't take any of that stuff personal. I get along with Xavier Woods. He and I did commentary on I think on Main Event or Superstars for a month or whatever. Get along with him. Get along with Kofi. Big E. Get along with him. Again, that backstage stuff. That's kind of the role. You're the punching bag and you go along with it.
Piggybacking off that topic of being the punchy bag and having a role like that and understanding your role. Obviously, we all know a few months ago WWE had a controversy with an announcer and a wrestler. How much of that stuff goes on between announcer and wrestler, where you're getting picked on basically?
In regards to you talking about Morrow and JBL?
I am.
There's I'd say there's a fair amount of that.
Yeah, Morrow came in as a professional, so the dynamic was weird. It feels like JBL, and I hate to say names, but it just feels like the situation just got so public, may have felt that he needed to earn his stripes in his world, in the wrestling world, despite whoever you were.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair.
Did you have to go through that? Did you have to earn your stripes?
I don't think JBL ever liked me. I don't think he ever respected me. Backstage, I got along with. This is a weird thing. Backstage, I got along with him. We could talk and whatever, but it was like oil and water. He and I on commentary together, and I don't know how much of that was being. Again, I don't know how much of that was being fed to him. I don't know how much of that was them just trying to see if I could take it, right? Because you have to be able to take it to make that jump to the next level.
Of course.
So, I don't dislike John. I didn't like working with him, if that makes sense. I think I said before that, at that point, it seemed like a lot of the time he just wanted to get it, kind of get his shit in and get over, and just get himself over at times. That's not the John. When JBL cares, he can be one of the best heel commentators in the business. I personally, and you can tell me I'm wrong, and you can tell me I'm an idiot, and if he'll hear this and or read something and say, Brady is talking about me again. I'm not talking, I'm not burying him or anything like that. It's again, when he cares, he's one of the best. I felt like he at that point he was just kind of over it and was doing it. So,
if JBL had it his way, who do you think would be next to him on the commentary booth?
Probably Cole.
Cole, okay.
He and Cole get along great, and they go back to 1997, 98. Right. When Cole first started out, and Cole kind of had to babysit those guys for a little bit, to be honest. Driving them around and stuff. JBL was a wild guy back then. Still is to an extent. So yeah, I mean, just him and Cole, that respect is there. They worked together for years, and it's again, kind of like I said, you can't take anything personal in wrestling, but it helps when somebody's needling you to know that you're friends with them. If that makes sense too,
right?
Because it is what it is. You get somebody just burying you the whole time, and after a while, geez, can I do anything right?
What I would like to know, I guess to kind of switch pace, you've called some matches on SmackDown and things of that nature. What are some of your favorite matches that you were able to call?
By far, number one favorite match that I've ever called is, it's funny, I was talking about this with my wife earlier today. It's 3 years this week. I think it was 3 years yesterday. Neville and Zayn take over Our Evolution, December 11th, 2014.
Wow.
What a story! What a story that was. The build to it was like nothing that's been done in recent years. It was perfect. It honestly was. If you go back and you watch that story from start to finish, it's perfect. And that match was perfect. It was unbelievable. The emotion, I've said this to other people, the emotion in that building, from the guys in the ring to the commentary team and to the fans, that was real. That wasn't, we were so all immersed in that. It was real. And that's one of those things where wrestling is at its absolute best, when you can be that immersed in it that you forget that it's a show and you forget that it's a work. Because the emotion, when that 1, 2, 3, the bell rang, the emotion in that building was like nothing I've ever seen in a wrestling show anywhere. The only thing that I could compare that to, quite honestly, is your team winning a championship. That's what the reaction from the crowd was like. Like when the Red Sox won the World Series, especially the first time they won the World Series. Think about what you felt like. I know what I felt like. It was the same thing when Sammy beat Neville that night. It was unbelievable.
With that being said, Sammy is a guy who's kind of been stuck in limbo since he's joined the main roster. He has a lot of talent, but he hasn't received that push that everyone likes. He's turned heel, which I think was long overdue, and I believe my co-hosts also believe me when we say it was long overdue, but it still seems like he's not getting his just due. How do you feel that he is being utilized on the main roster now?
Again, I don't watch a ton of it. I read about it, watch clips. So in the context of watching it on a TV, you know what I mean? Watching it in real time, TV show, it's, the reactions from the crowd sometimes are sweetened up in post and that type of thing. I feel like he's finally getting more of a reaction from the crowd, which is important, obviously. I think the reason as a babyface, maybe why it hasn't necessarily worked so far up there, I don't think Vince sees it in him. Only because of the way he looks. Because he doesn't fit that Vince McMahon mold. That being said, I think bigger than that is they haven't really put him in that story that he works best when he's fighting from underneath. That's his thing. When he's fighting from underneath, he's at his best. And I don't want to say the ultimate babyface in peril, but he's like the ultimate good guy. Going back to that match for the R Evolution match where he's got the belt and he doesn't want to compromise his morals by hitting Neville with the belt and beating him. He wants to do it 1, 2, 3, and it almost cost him. If you think back to that story, how many times did he try to be the good guy and it almost cost him? But he held true to his ideals and won the title on his own merits, in his own way. They haven't really put him in that type of a situation. I thought for sure the natural thing that you would do is that eventually you would, and maybe they're going to get there now, because now you're establishing these two guys as friends in their team, and of course down the line you get the ultimate, you get the ultimate flip, and now they're head to head. Maybe you continue that story again. I just feel like it's so ready made for the main roster. I hope they don't wait too long to do that, because I really think it could be a money program that people will get behind.
I see them as the modern day Triple H, Shawn Michaels, that being Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I understand where you've mentioned that you feel like he has it, and it's all about Vince. The same thing can be said about Cesaro. Cesaro was down in NXT for a couple of great matches, some with Sami Zayn and a few others. Tell me about your interactions with Cesaro, and if you feel personally, if he should have been a multi-time world champion by now.
I think so. He's got the talent. He's got the look. He's naturally a funny guy. I don't know how much that's apparent from promos that he does. He's another guy that I feel like they tell you be yourself, and then you be yourself, and they're like, nah, we want you to kind of be something else. But nobody's really been able to. They've tried different things, and it hasn't really stuck. Like he's just a badass wrestler. He's super, super strong. In a perfect world, that would be enough to carry the character. But again, I go back to the thing where it's all, especially up there, it's all about what kind of situations you're put in. And have they put him in the situations for the fan? I mean, the fans got behind him with the Cesaro section, so that's a whole other thing. But again, if it doesn't fit the path of kind of, we're gonna go this way. If it doesn't fit into the plan, a lot of times that stuff kind of just gets pushed aside. Cesaro's a hard guy to pinpoint because he can do everything. I don't know. I don't know if they just don't like his promos or what.
Of all your interactions backstage with these guys, who can you tell us is most closest to what we see on TV? Because you just mentioned Cesaro and how funny it is. And sometimes that comes off on TV when he gets the opportunity, but a lot of times it doesn't. Who's closest to what you actually see on TV? And kind of opposite of that question, who's furthest away from what we actually see?
Probably Kane for the latter half.
Yeah, I think we all know that. That's a good one.
Vote for mayor.
Right. Yeah, so probably him. And I suppose that's maybe a layup because he's a super, comic book character, right?
Right.
Maybe Booker's a bit different than he is on TV.
In what way?
Is it King Booker or Booker T?
King Booker.
Yeah. Who are we seeing?
Book's hilarious.
Nice.
Which comes off on TV.
I feel like now from the stuff I've seen that he's done recently, he seems to give fewer Fs, if that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know if I don't want to drop that bomb.
Yeah, no, we see it. We see it.
Yeah. So where before, he was trying to, okay, what do they want me to do? Now he's just going to do it. He's just like doing him. Yeah.
It's apparent in great ways sometimes too. Power to him.
But I mean, he's not drastically different than he is on TV. I'm trying to think. I mean, Xavier Woods is pretty close to what he is on TV. Lawler's pretty close to what he is on TV.
Really? Because on TV he comes off as a little bit of a creepy old man.
Puppies!
I totally see it. I see it.
So I hope that's not the way he comes off in real life.
I believe the assessment. I think that's who he is.
A guy like Graves is, he's the ultimate, the turned up to 10, what he really is. He's funny, sarcastic, that type of stuff. Acerbic. to throw another 10-cent word out there. So that's, Graves is, Matt Polinsky up to 10. I'm trying to think of other guys. I mean, like, God, who else? I don't know.
You had a great, close interaction with him. One name that I would like to know about, like, what's Michael Cole like? Cole's
actually really cool. I get along great with Cole. Got along real well with him. Rode with him in the car for a couple of months. Got along with him real well.
Did you feel like he was somebody who you could count on to have your back if you had opinions on things you wanted to know?
Yeah, absolutely, and that was kind of by design too, right? Cole was behind me, so without getting into without going down the rabbit hole of why and how and what happened and all that stuff. I mean, Cole was behind me, and I don't know. I don't know why. He even said it. Hey, I'm grooming you and Tom. I'm grooming both of you guys. It's like, you guys are lucky coming up now because, like, I want you guys to take my spot. When I was coming up, JR didn't want me to take a spot, so it was more difficult. He's like, I want you guys to take my spot, and I either screwed up or did whatever, or they just decided that they had too many nerdy guys with glasses, and off I went to calling wrestling in bars again. But now I get along great with Cole.
You mentioned real quick Tom, as in Tom Phillips. We know that you guys kind of have a slightly disdain, I guess, from one another. Do you care to touch on that topic and where you think it all went south, and if you think it played a role in your dismissal from WWE?
Probably did, more than likely.
Yeah.
It was. I'll just say this: I don't play politics. I don't. You know what I mean? If I'm gonna, and I guess maybe like saying that. Well, you could say, well, you did play politics because Booker T got you in, right? But I never tried to bury people. I never tried to make anybody look bad. I would, at times when I could have buried certain people, I kept my mouth shut and tried to help them out, as opposed to burying them. When burying them would probably, for like career-wise, that was my opportunity where I could have just fucking sliced somebody's neck. You know what I mean? And I could have. I look back at it now, and I a couple of opportunities where I'm like, not only, I could have, but I should have. But then I think to myself, like, if I did, again, it's, if you want to tie that in, you go to the whole Sami Zayn story. Would that be out of character for me? And would I be okay with getting ahead by screwing somebody else? And honestly, you can call me a pussy or whatever you want. The answer is no. I don't. If I'm going to get an opportunity or get ahead, I want it to be because of my talent. And if I'm not going to get ahead, I want it to be because of my lack of talent. So, as far as Tom goes, from day one, we were competitive. I never had an issue with him. My idea and my feeling when I was there the whole time was that there's enough work for everybody, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to do whatever anybody asked me to do. It was competitive from day one, and I think he took whatever opportunity he could. If I made a faux pas or did whatever to make sure that people heard about it. So as far as the whole thing after I got released, you're referencing the thing with my wife where she tweeted something out and whatever. That particular statement was not in regards to me. It was actually about somebody else. But again, you tie it all together. Look, I don't have a problem with him. I'm happy that he's having success. Good for him. He's a good announcer. He's probably a better on-camera guy than I am. We're not sending each other Christmas cards, but I don't. It's it's the wrestling business, and you can go in and sharpen your knife. But that said, that if you do it to somebody else, eventually it's probably going to happen to you as well.
Oh man! So I have to ask this.
Yeah,
I have to ask this. WrestleMania 34, Rich Bocchini,
what about it?
Formerly known as Rich Brennan, versus Tom Phillips. What is the match stipulation? I want to know.
Oh,
good one. That was a good one, right? A new question that you haven't answered.
Like, what's the stipulation?
I wanted to go.
Tuxedo match is like. Sorry, what's that?
I want to go so bad and do my Vince McMahon. Hell in a Cell.
Let me think. Not a tuxedo match.
Like the Fink. You're not the Fink.
Microphone on the pole match.
Maybe like a kendo stick match. I think.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Hey,
You just spoke to my heart.
Yeah.
Another guy.
I could just wind up like I'm in the batting cage. You know what I mean? I can feel it too. I can feel it. I can feel that match. Like,
yeah.
Fuck you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Going both ways.
Each shot.
That's awesome. I love that raw emotion, man. I love it.
Now, kind of talk about altercations. Did you ever see any altercations, physical, backstage between performers that kind of made you say, "Wow,
okay,
that's kind of crazy"?
Julio, technically, we have to call them superstars.
Superstars.
I mean, guys that get heated sometimes. Different things in a match. Usually, that stuff was kind of glazed over by one of the agents or something.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it happens. I mean, look, you're in the ring. The margin of error is very small, or whether you really potato somebody and they get pissed, or whether you blow a spot and then the guy's pissed at that. Like that stuff, you're performers. The pressure is immense to go out there and do it right. So guys get heated when shit doesn't go right, and as they should. But I never saw anything with like fist fights or anything like that. And I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it has happened. I saw guys get hot at each other about things, but again, in that kind of environment, it's kind of like being yelled at through the headset when you're on TV. That's not just WWE. That's everywhere on TV. Live TV production is very, very stressful, and it's the kind of thing that, like, whatever's said during the broadcast, it all just kind of goes away afterwards in some ways. We've
heard stories of how The Undertaker was kind of like a godfather back in his day. Who was, so to speak, the godfather in your time there, who all the people went to backstage whenever they had a problem, whenever they need to get an opinion on something? Who was the guy that everybody could rely on?
That's a good question. I honestly can't even answer that because I wasn't in the performer locker room. And at NXT, at certain times, there were certain guys, like there were certain guys that you kind of knew were the locker room leaders. CJ Parker was one of those guys. Sammy was one of those guys. Kevin was one of those guys. Neville to an extent, but he's kind of quiet. Up on the main roster, I'm sure guys like Big Show, Mark Henry, any of the vet, Randy Orton, any of the vet guys like that are going to be the guys that you Cena to any of those guys that have been around. It's kind of the hierarchy of it. And then when Undertaker's there, everybody bows down to the Undertaker. If Stone Cold shows up, and if The Rock shows up, on and on and on.
With you being originally from New England and John Cena being originally from New England, Western Newbury, Massachusetts, did you guys ever have like a kind of, I guess you could say like a bond, just knowing you guys are from the Northeast? Was he just one of those guys where a lot of people portrayed him as like, hey, he's a political guy?
Is he untouchable, Rich? Yeah. Is he an untouchable?
I'm sure he is. My interactions with John were always cool. We'd joke sometimes and talk, but again, like it's not like for me, it's not like I was around him all the time. TV days, he'd be out at ringside. He'd talk to him if he needs something. See him in catering or in the back, go up by, hey John, what's up? And he knew my face. We talked about the Red Sox a little bit and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say we were like close friends or anything like that.
I'd love to know about a guy who we recently had here on the Unsanctioned Podcast. Such a privilege. We had JR, good old JR, Jim Ross, and his philosophies into going into commentating seem pretty unique. Things that he's able to do, the creative liberties that he has. How much was he able to pass down to you? What were those interactions like with Jim Ross? I know you talked a little bit about it before you mentioned him. Any mentoring going on there between you and Jim Ross? Yeah. He
came down to NXT. I want to say they shot him and McFoley shot I forget who they shot for. I don't know if it might have been the network where McFoley did a thing at Full Sail, and I think like JR opened for him or something like that. It was, like the spoken word thing that he does.
Right.
So he was there. I remember he came into the production meeting and we talked. We chat back and forth from time to time. Like, I've been able to pick his brain here and there. But I didn't have the level of interaction with him just because he wasn't there. He was off doing his own stuff at the time. But he's one of the greats, and I've listened to a lot of the stuff where he talks about his philosophy, and there's a lot to learn. There's always a lot to learn, and anybody who's had the level of success that a guy like Jim Ross has had, if you're an announcer and you don't listen to what he says, whether you agree or disagree, if you don't listen to it and understand it, then you're nuts. He's got so much insight.
Kind of understanding that WWE is ran by a three-headed monster in the McMahon family. If you really count Triple H as a member of the McMahon family, in Triple H, Vince, and Stephanie. Of those three, who was the toughest to deal with?
I can't really say any of them, to be honest. I really can't. I never really had to deal with Stephanie much. She was always nice anytime I ever talked to her. Triple H was hands-on at NXT. He was fine to me. And Vince is Vince, but
it just seems like he's
that
a passionate guy.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
Manny being Manny.
No, he knew my name, so I was like, okay, well, I guess that's good.
That's a markout moment.
Hello, Rich. How are you? All right, sir. Whatever.
Now here's the thing: Did he call you Rich Brennan and think that was your actual name?
I have no idea. I have no clue.
He probably named you.
No, I actually came up with the name on my own.
Oh, nice.
Sort of.
So where did that come from? Where did Brennan come from?
My grandmother's maiden name is French Canadian Breton, Breton, Breton. So I wanted to say, I said, well, I'll be Rich Brennan. It's kind of say it like that, but it's kind of a nod to my family. Something that I wanted the name to be something that meant something to me in some form or fashion. And when they said, well, if you're going to be Brennan, you might as well be Brennan. It's easier to say, easier to write. Okay, I'm Rich Brennan. So that's how that happened.
Now, did they offer any suggestions to you?
They sent me a list, all of which I hated. It was all it was all very almost like it was all Italian last names, which I'm Italian. I'm proud of my Italian heritage, but
right.
it was all very like cartoony sounding Italian last names. If that makes sense.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I'm like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to be
Salvatore.
Like,
I mean, all the announcers have great names. What were some of those names?
God, I wish I still had the list.
Yeah.
It was just awful. I just remember looking at it and being like, no, maybe, no. I'm like, fuck that. Like, no, right. I'm going to be, no, this is what I want.
Nah,
This is what I want, But, as far as, like I said, as far as Vince goes, I'd see him in the back, hello, Rich, how are you? All right, whatever. And then usually he wasn't in my ear at SmackDown because, number one, he really wasn't at SmackDown that often. But when he was, he'd usually just yell at Cole, and Cole would yell at me.
Nice.
But I remember doing the Madison Square Garden show, and he was in my ear that night. And, save for a couple things here and there, like, he really didn't, like, I didn't get screamed at like I've heard he can be. He just, a couple things here and there that he, he made clear that he wanted said or done in a certain way. Very professional, very whatever. And again, maybe at that point he knew, let's not give it to this kid too hard yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Before we let you go, and of course, hopefully you have that Dusty Rose impression on deck.
I wasn't forgetting that.
They're not going to let you off the hook, Rich.
I'd love to ask.
You're not going to let me off the hook, huh?
Right?
Oh, no.
At least something he says. But for me personally, I love that we started the episode with you attending a wrestling show back in the day, right? And so you come from some aspect of being a fan, being in your background. Was it everything you thought it would be in terms of your professional experience with the WWE?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before.
Awesome.
I don't think I've ever asked myself that question. I feel like I could have done more, I guess, and I feel like I suppose maybe that's why I'm still calling stuff on the indies now, because I still feel like I have something to prove, and I still feel like I feel like I'm good enough at it that I should still have an opportunity to do it. And I know maybe that sounds presumptuous or pretentious or something, but
no, it doesn't.
I still feel like I have something to offer, and I feel like part of me feels like, yeah, you know what, they screwed up and they shouldn't have let me go. Because weird, when I think about my time there, I feel like I was just finally starting to really get what they wanted. And this was even after I was on SmackDown and they brought in Morrow. It was like even after that. So for the couple of months that I was there before they canned me, honestly, I really felt like, oh, okay, kind of this is what they, you know what I mean? And I felt like I was getting more into that, more into that rhythm in some ways. But I mean, as far as everything, I approached every day there like it could be my last, because just knowing the way the company operates, you never know, who, maybe you didn't shake somebody's hand right, or you didn't say hi to somebody because you didn't see him, or whatever. There's so many like little infractions that just, this guy didn't show respect to what it's a very particular type of place to work. Again, at the end of the day, it's all about Vince in many ways. And I knew as an announcer that if for some reason Vince didn't like me, I don't like the cut of his chin, or I don't like his glasses, or his voice is whatever. I knew that I wouldn't have a job, so I approached every day there like it could be my last. And every trip that I went on, I tried to take advantage of just kind of soaking the whole thing in as much as I could, and traveling to the different places. I tried to take advantage of that. Like, as a baseball fan, especially going to the West Coast, I'd always wanted to see games out on the West Coast and never had an opportunity to get out there. So I made sure that as much as I could on the Sunday, I would get like the earliest flight out of Orlando that I could, and got out to the West Coast in time. Like, I remember getting off the plane and driving right to Safeco to see the Mariners. Getting into San Jose, for instance, and getting off the plane and going and hopping on the train and taking the train up to Oakland to go and see a game. Like doing different things like that, knowing that, this could last 6 months, it could last a year, it could last 10 years. But I want to take advantage of every minute that I can. And even, corny stuff, like just kind of, taking an opportunity just to go out before the show and just kind of look around. Think to yourself, like, wow, like I actually get to do this. This is, this is insane. Now, that said, you dream of getting somewhere, and or just like you dream of meeting a star or celebrity or whatever, and it's not necessarily how you maybe thought it would be. So there's an element of that too. But by and large, I say it all the time. I'm thankful that I got the opportunity. I don't have to necessarily like that I'm, the way it ended or whatever, but I get an opportunity that a lot of people would kill for. I got to do it, and I got to call some big matches, some historic matches, and honestly, I get to be part of NXT at a time where, in many ways, it was kind of redefining what wrestling can be about. So I'm proud of the fact that I get to be there and call that stuff, and by and large, it was a good experience. It could have been a great experience, but it was a good experience, and I'm thankful for every second that I had there.
Now, Rich, you talked about how you are commentating on the indie circuit. The independents have been flourishing this past year, even with reports of, just Bullet Club members such as the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and others possibly self-funding a 10,000-seat show. So just tell us, like, what do you think about the independent scene overall? How refreshing it may be, and if there's certain people that you haven't interacted with that you would like to interact and be able to call their matches. And ultimately, who should we keep an eye out for?
I think wrestling's in a bit of a bubble right now, and I think eventually it'll level out at some point. It always does. Wrestling is cyclical, and it always has been. But that said, I think what you're seeing is in many ways a reaction to what the big company is doing, WWE. It's like anything else. People being dissatisfied with what the corporate standard beer of any industry is putting out. You can liken this to beer. I've mentioned craft beer before, where now every city has one, if not 5 or 6 craft breweries. Mm-hmm. People want local. They want to buy local. They want to support local, and they want to feel like they're making a difference in their communities. And I think wrestling is kind of feeling some of that. So it's kind of neat that you're getting a return in a sense of territories in a way. Maybe not the full territories where you're doing loops, but every major city now has, or for the most part, every major city has a promotion that's doing well. That's doing something. That's garnering attention. So it's exciting. Hopefully the bubble doesn't burst. I hope that the people who are benefiting from it remember why they're benefiting from it, and don't get too greedy with it. If that, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody or anything like that, and I'm not even talking about anybody in particular. But I just feel like there is a limit to growth in anything. So I just hope that as the independent scene continues to grow, that you know that you don't get, and there's always Carney Shysters and stuff, but hopefully those types are being pushed out and they don't find a way back in, because most of the people who are running promotions right now, they're trying to get away from all the Carney stuff. So again, hopefully it continues to grow, and hopefully the bubble doesn't burst too much. Now, as far as guys to keep an eye on, Sammy Guevara out of Texas is somebody to keep an eye on. He was just at we just had him on the MLW show this past week. So definitely Sammy Guevara. Shane Strickland, if you're not familiar with him, he was on the first MLW show. There's a tag team that I call a lot of their stuff at Fest Wrestling up in Gainesville. They're called the Ugly Ducklings. They're a tag team that's on they're out of North Carolina. So they work a lot in the South. I don't know that they've been on. I know they've worked in Jersey. I don't know how far up north.
I'm just gonna say, really, North Carolina has put out a lot of great tag teams. You have the Young Bucks, you got the Hardys. So North Carolina might be a little factory there.
Yeah, they're really exciting. You know, obviously there's guys like Ricochet who are out there who, you know, he's probably going to WWE. But if you're not familiar with his work, I mean, he's something else. He really
Ricochet,
is.
AKA
we are.
Puma.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. But you know, the younger guys, like I said, you know, Guevara, Jason Cade's another kid who's exciting. MJF, I don't know if you've seen MJF yet, but I think he's 21 or 22. You see him, he's instantly punchable in his promos, and he's a great deal. But I think he's going to go far in the business too. Just off the top of my head, those are a couple guys that stand out.
Now, we can't let you leave without the Dusty.
I try to get you out of it, Rich. These guys won't let me.
All right.
He really did.
You know.
So I'm gonna take it back to where he said this. It was in the Performance Center. It was on probably on a Monday night promo class, and he was explaining about how you got to be ready and willing and able to kind of do whatever they want when you make it up to the main roster. And sometimes you may have an idea or something you want to do that, you know, you're just so determined to push through, but you got to understand the opportunities that you're given and blah, 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 blah. Kind of going on about that. So his phrase was, you can't roller skate through a buffalo herd.
Now we gotta hear you say it in Dusty's voice, though.
So I'm gonna imagine that he's saying this to me, and he said, "Let's see if I can do this." You can't roller skate through a buffalo herd. That's terrible.
You know what?
I love it.
That was a solid B.
I love it.
Solid B. A solid.
I thought he hated my impression of him.
Also, you've done it before.
You've done it for him.
You've done it for him, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I did it in front of him. And he's like, he looked at me. And he kind of gives me that look, and he's like, he's like, what the hell was that? You know what I mean?
That ain't good enough.
Funny. That sounds better than that, baby.
Oh, God.
Baby.
So many funny stories. Just like not even wrestling related stuff. Just like funny stuff that that happened. But yeah, that was my attempt. I hope it wasn't that bad.
He came off as a guy who was just fun to be around, where you could just soak in knowledge 24/7 from him.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, but I don't get out of bed for less than $1,000.
That's the old school mentality. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Now, Rich, as we've been alluding to, we're about to wrap up here. But before we go, tell our fans here where we can find you nowadays.
Well, I'm on Twitter if you want to follow me there for whatever reason. It's Rich Bocchini. It's BOCCHINI. I do a lot of stuff for the MLW Radio Network. So I'm one of the co-hosts of the flagship show that comes out every Tuesday, and I'm also the host of the J.J. Dillon Show. J.J., of course, the legendary leader of the Four Horsemen, so I get to pick his brain every week. Wow. Yeah. So I do that, and I do play-by-play for a number of independent promotions. Fest Wrestling out in Gainesville, Florida. They're on Twitter at Fest Wrestling. Wrestle Circus down in Austin. They're on a bit of a hiatus right now, but Wrestle Circus does a lot of good stuff. And, of course, MLW, Major League Wrestling, back-running shows here in Orlando. Available online, MLW.tv. I don't know if this comes out today or tomorrow or whatever, but as we're recording this, the latest MLW show is in the process of being put up on MLW.tv. An incredible match with Shane Strickland and John Hennigan against Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc, a hardcore match where they pulled stuff out that honestly your jaw's going to be on the ground when you see it. So those are some of the places that you can find me. And it looks like I'm actually going to be doing some stuff with Defy Wrestling as well. I haven't mentioned this to anybody, but it looks like I'm doing stuff with Defy out of Seattle. And just an excellent promotion. Definitely encourage you to check it out. I think Twitter, it's Defy NW is where they are.
And Rich, of course, we all need to make a living. What is the booking information for you?
Find me on Twitter, like I said, at Rich Bocchini, BOCCHINI, or just email me, richbocchini@gmail.com if you want to bring me in to do play-by-play or ring announce or seminar or whatever. More than happy to do it, and love talking to the fans, and love just being able to pass on some of the stuff that I've been taught, and maybe some of the young guys coming up in the business, whether they're wrestlers or announcers or whatever. So more than accessible, and love helping people out.
Thank you very much, Rich. You will never know. We really appreciate this time speaking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wealth of knowledge, just not even with WWE, but just overall with wrestling. And it was a compelling conversation. We hate to say the word interview. We don't want to seem like we're just firing questions. We like having conversations with our guests. Definitely, this is up there as one of our favorites. So thank you for just giving us your time and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and your love for and passion for the wrestling sport.
And just to know what you're up to. Thank you.
Hey, guys, I appreciate it. Hopefully, I think I'm going to be up in the Northeast pretty soon, so, maybe we can connect when I'm up there. Appreciate the time.
Rich Bocchini, everybody. That is the guy formerly known as Rich Brennan. But the other guy, the real guy, is pretty cool, too. And
the real guy's cooler than the guy we knew on TV, obviously.
That was just awesome.
But what insight, what backstage kind of gave us a peek into the backstage area and what it's like being an announcer for the WWE.
But
Big
on
time.
top of that, he's just real candid.
Humble guy. Just a regular guy.
Yeah,
I love it.
And as we mentioned, we don't like to interview people. We like to have conversations. Everything that he put forth, was very candid. And hopefully our listeners think it's great. And it's a present to you guys.
Thank you all for listening. I'm Luis Vasquez. Find me on Twitter at LuisVasquez617.
I'm Jay Holland. You can find me on social media at JOCity, JAYOCITY. Unless it's on Facebook at that 781 at the end.
And I'm Julio June. Right now, you could find me in St. Louis. No, I'm joking. You could find me in the game of life.
Stay in touch with us. Unsanctioned Podcast at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, Unsanctioned PW, and on Twitter, same handle, Unsanctioned PW. For Luis Vasquez, Julio, and Jay, it's been a wrap. It's been a great pleasure.
Unsanctioned Podcast. See ya. We're now signing off to the airwaves.
Peace.
Bye.
Gotta bring the city back, let me know we still here, never gonna stop. Keep rolling like a wheelchair, can't be shook. You know the wolf smell, fear, don't